Please can we confirm the recording has started? Has. Thank you to everybody for attending this meeting of the Council on Tuesday the 18th of November 2021. My name is Councillor Steve Holgate and I am the Mayor. Before we start the usual proceedings, I'm sure you will be all saddened to learn of the death of former Councillor Frank Culshaw, who was Mayor 1990 to 1991. You can all stand and observe a minute's silence, please. Okay. Due to regulations surrounding voting, only those members physically present are able to vote. If you would like to speak, please raise your hand and I will invite you to speak. When you are speaking, please speak towards the microphone so everyone can hear you. If anyone is having issues, please let Democratic Services know. Now some housekeeping. We are not expecting a fire drill. So if the alarms sound, please make your way to the exits and the way that you came in. Please ensure that all mobile phones are switched to silent. If the technology fails for any reason, then I will adjourn the meeting for a few minutes to try and resolve the issue, or if this is not possible, a new date and time will be arranged. Democratic Services have left each member a survey. Please can you complete this and leave it on your desk. You all each have an updated contacts list for your council diary. Now move on to apologies for absence. Our apologies. Do we have any apologies? Councillor Derbyshire has apologised for any absence. Councillor Boardman. And Councillor Harold Heaton from the floor. Okay, thank you. There are no more. Move on to the minutes of the last meeting. This item is for a decision. Are there any issues? Blah, blah, blah. No. Councillor Bradley, would you like to propose them?
Tuesday the 28th of September are taken as a true and correct record. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for switching me on.
Councillor Wilson.
Seconded.
Thank you. No, they're not yet. Are there any issues to raise on the accuracy of these minutes? Yes, Councillor Platt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's not accuracy, actually. It's just a point that Councillor Boardman raised about the G7 expenses. We were just going to be brought back the information.
Oh. There's another opportunity during the meeting. I think I've read in the back of my book there that it's for the purposes of accuracy only. I'm really sorry.
Okay.
I don't want to suppress democracy, but that's the rule. Who else? Okay. Right. So there's no issues with the accuracy of the minutes. Can we have a show of hands because this is for decision? Those in favour? Anyone against? Any abstentions? No. Okay. Declarations of interest. Has anybody got any declarations of interest, either pecuniary or non-pecuniary? Yes. Yes.
I'd like to declare a non-pecuniary interest on item 13, the Parish Council lease. I will leave the room.
That's noted. Councillor Ainsworth.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. As an employee of Forbes Solicitors, I need to declare a non-pecuniary personal interest in item 13.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to declare a pecuniary interest as Chairman of Clayton Woods Parish Council. So I will leave the room at the time.
Right. Okay, that's clear. Any further? No? Okay. We'll move on. Mayoral announcements. It was a huge privilege to attend and lay a wreath on behalf of the people of Chorley at the Cenotaph on Remembrance Sunday. It was incredibly well attended by members of the public, as well as uniform groups and veterans in the parade. Thank you to everyone who supported the event. It really went well, and the weather was on our side as well. I'd like to give you a sort of half-yearly update on my Mayor's community fundraising updates. After just a half of the way through my mayoral year, I so far have raised just over £11,500. This has come from events including the kayaking for kids, which was over £5,000. The bonfire was, I think, £2,300. Chorley's Got Soul was over £2,500, 2,800 I think it was, as well as donations from initiatives such as the tree giveaway store on the market, which has raised £300 or £400, as well as £700 came from the little brown envelopes. You wouldn't expect anything other than that, would you? From the Mayor's inaugural ball. So we're touching 11,500, and I hope to raise even more money from further events in the remainder of my mayoral year, including the 007 Casino Royale charity ball on Saturday, the 26th of March, and other events as well. That's my mayoral announcements done. So we have moved to the next item, item 4, which is public questions. We don't have any public questions. You must forgive me, I've lost my varifocals, so back to the basics again, I'm afraid. So keep moving my paper backwards and forwards so I can read it. Right. Item 5 is corporate strategy refresh 2021, 22, 23, 24. They're on your agenda item pages 11 to 44. This item is for decision, and I believe Councillor Bradley, or is it Councillor Wilson? Who's introducing this? Councillor Wilson, take the floor.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Congratulations on your fundraising so far. Excellent achievement, and just to let you know, Mr Mayor, there's another £50 for your kayaking, which will for the youth zone, so that can be made payable. Picked up recently, so people have still got it in the forefront of their mind. So there you go. There we go. There we go. Excellent. Thank you, Mr Mayor, for introducing myself to give this corporate strategy. Try and speak properly, Mr Mayor. Corporate strategy report. Delighted to do so and delighted to recommend it for approval. Before we look at what we are proposing for the forthcoming year, Mr Mayor, as usual, I think it's important to look at what has also been done for the past 12 months, particularly given the nature of those 12 months, Mr Mayor. And you will recall last November, this council met via Teams, as all the meetings were then, as we were once again in a lockdown, having had the month of November in lockdown. But of course, it was much worse for ourselves in Chorley and other parts of the northwest, as we were under restrictions from September. Then we were under lockdown in November, and then of course back into those restrictions, and then a further lockdown, Mr Mayor, in January, which ran all the way through till the spring of this year. And the reason I mention that, Mr Mayor, is we have to put that in the forefront of our minds when looking at what the council has achieved, because those were very, very difficult times. Still challenging now, but those were particularly difficult, not only having been through lockdown from the previous March and the difficulties that caused, but not knowing what was coming in the future. But we did know it was going to be tough, and we did know it was going to be very, very difficult for residents, very difficult for businesses, and very difficult for everyone who in our community, and it was. But what we must make a big point of, Mr Mayor, is that through those difficulties, this council, our officers and our councillors all did, in my view, an excellent job. An excellent job in making sure that the basic services were provided, but more than the basic services, those services that we directed to those we were most in need during that time, whether that's people who are isolated on their own, people who need support from the council who have been struggling financially, again, individuals and businesses, and also, Mr Mayor, making sure, which is crucially important, that our corporate plan continues to be delivered. And we can see in the papers in front of us that we have an excellent delivery, that all our major projects have either been delivered or rated as green, i.e. will be delivered by the end of the year. And on top of that, only one rated as amber, which we have been discussing the ICT issue, which will be brought back online. So I'm very, very pleased and just want to put on the record, Mr Mayor, from the council, from the administration, our thanks to everyone for their efforts and their support in what we've done for the last 12 months. So what does that actually mean on the ground? Well, it meant that we opened the Westway sporting facility in Alistair Village, a fantastic facility. For those who haven't been, I would very much recommend that you go down to see it. Wonderful 3G pitch there that's used constantly day and night, as I know the councillors and residents of Alistair Village will tell you. The running track, which is again a wonderful facility, genuine standard track that people can train on properly rather than having to go outside of the borough again to access good facilities. And of course, the plans don't necessarily stop there, Mr Mayor. There is more to come down at Westway, and it's a very, very exciting project, and it's great to see that used. Anyone who drives past, you can see what's going on for that it's a very, very busy area. But we've also not just been focusing on the big ticket items, although as important as that is, a number of improvements in play areas, whether that's Longfield Avenue, Manor Road, Lodge Bank, Orchard Drive, schemes that we've either been involved with partners or delivered directly ourselves. They have all been delivered during this year, making a big difference to residents in those local communities. An issue that's close to your heart, Mr Mayor, the issue of climate. I know you held very full-time office, engaged on a number of initiatives to help address the climate issue. More so than we discussed in Cabinet on Thursday, which was the purchase of land to earmark for planting trees and to make sure we have that green corridor surrounding Chorley, protecting from the damage that is caused to our environment with pollution and so on. On other issues that we're doing, the town centre and the markets, they are now almost complete. And again, the market is vibrant. There are people using the market and visiting the market, also traders on. And they continue to be busy, and that's good. And our investment is already seeing dividends. Supermarkets even more than before, and that's a massive positive. One project that I'm particularly proud of, Mr Mayor, is the work being done at Astley. And again, and the hall looks fantastic. The work continues, obviously. There's more to be done before we reopen, but the work that's done so far, on time and to budget, is pretty remarkable when you consider the potential pitfalls dealing with this. historic 16th century building. So that is, again, we're very, very lucky. We managed to get the Chorley flower showing. We managed to do a slightly amended version of Chorley Live, but at least the event was on. And we also held, of course, the G7 Speakers Conference, which again was a fantastic success. Councillor Platt, I'll be kind and say you were trying to ask a question before. I think it was about some of the costs that we said we still hadn't finally established. If that was your question, then I'll chase up to get that. If it was something else, please tell me, and likewise we'll sort it. I think that's what you were after. So if those have been established, I'll make sure that you get the final answer on that. But that was a wonderful event, and it showcased Chorley internationally, not just nationally, and made us all very proud of the area which we represent. And then there are other schemes, Mr. Mayor, such as the developments at Oaker Lane and the work that went on at Tatton now. That all started during this last year. So they were all the key projects. They were all the aims and ambitions of the council. And despite the very tough times that I described, we delivered, and that is a major, major achievement. As usual, at Chorley Council, we don't stop and we don't just look back at what we've done. We look to improve and go one step further. And we continue to raise the bar. We raise the bar ourselves in terms of what we want to see, raise the bar for our officers, and hopefully deliver better results for our residents. And on that point about residents, the good news, Mr. Mayor, is we have just undertaken a resident satisfaction survey that will be published soon. But already I can tell you that on the early indicators, our satisfaction that there's a place to live has gone up. Our satisfaction with the way the council runs things has gone up. That's good news. That is a reflection of what we've been doing, the way we've handled the pandemic, the way we've continued to deliver our services and deliver on our pledges. That is reflected in that survey, I believe, and we're going to discuss that in more detail when it's fully published. But as I say, Mr. Mayor, we don't sit back, we move on. And we move on in big ways, and that's what this report is about tonight. That's what the corporate strategy sets out. And I'd like to thank our officers. I will thank Chris, even though he ignored me at the last meeting we just had. But I will thank Chris, and I'll thank Vicky in particular for your work on developing this strategy with us, for working with the group, with the Labour group, and working with the executive in making sure that this strategy is before us tonight and is backed up with key projects and key measures as well. I'll start with your issue, Mr. Mayor, your favourite issue, which is the climate, and probably the biggest issue that we all face, not just locally or nationally, across the globe. It is important that we play our part in that debate and in delivering that change. Just all watched COP26. Whether that's a success or a failure, it's progress. It is progress. I will say, my personal belief is it's progress. Of course, we want to do more, but we've all then got to take on personal responsibility in terms of delivering that as well. And we have that role to play at Chorley Council. We're on with planting the trees, that pledge of 116,000 trees, one for every resident. That will continue. We've got reports coming to the next climate group meeting, which will be discussing how we use our assets to make them more environmentally friendly as well. There is other work going on. I think the pace of change is only going to get faster and more intense. I think everyone in the council supports that, particularly opposition members as well as the Labour group. And we will carry on delivering that, and that will be our top priority for this council over the next 12 months. Equally, in relation to the priorities, Mr. Mayor, we've got to look post-pandemic and where do we seek to improve. And one of those key areas is going to be supporting people in jobs and supporting people in work. That's always been the case. It's always been an aim of this council to support people, but no more so than now. And that's why in the strategy, one of our key projects is to look at how we support business and enterprise. We perhaps need to review our teams. We perhaps need to review the way we target our support. That's what the review will do, to look at how do we best cater for the needs of our businesses, to get new people coming into the borough, and to make sure that we can continue to support people who can get good work in the local area. And that's of crucial importance that we will deliver on. We're also very, very acutely aware, Mr. Mayor, of the need for people to have good housing, and house building in Chorley is a massive issue. We all know that. We've seen the many challenges that's brought in recent times and the potential threat to green belts in the future. But one element we can't miss off is the need for affordable housing. We do have a good record on affordable housing under this administration. Over 1,400 affordable homes have been built since we've been in control, but we've got to do better. And again, the strategy sets out that we will be bringing forward plans of how we increase our delivery on affordable homes. We've already got our own portfolio of homes now, whether that's through the extra care schemes or the Syrian refugee programme. But again, we need to look at how we can increase that stock and make a contribution above and beyond what would come just from developers developing out their percentage of affordable properties. So that will be coming back. Very, very important projects that I've already mentioned, but continue, such as the Tatton development, a fantastic new facility. We can see now the building is up, despite a fire a month or so ago that set us back a few weeks. The building is up, development's coming forward. That's going to provide a new GP surgery, a pharmacy, extra care, new community centre, new play facilities. That's a massive, massive investment into the east ward of Chorley, particularly driven perhaps at one of the worst areas in terms of health, in terms of inequalities. So that's a crucial project to address those health needs. But again, it doesn't stop there. We look at the Whittle practice that's currently being built out. That will be obviously completed again as part of this year, addressing what is a long, long need of improved GP facilities in Whittle. There's no doubt. If former Councillor Bell was here, he would tell us, and Councillor Walker, etc. That has been a long, ongoing need, and that will be delivered by this Labour Council into an area where it is much, much needed. And again, that's of key importance. Digital skills, the project stays on there for digital skills. That has taken perhaps a hit this year with COVID, because people haven't been able to access support and help. But as we know, as the world transition, it's already gone there, that we rely much more on digital access. That's equally makes it more important that we re-engage with the people who need it most. And that's why that's still there as a key project. Our town centre remains important. Our rural parishes remain important, both, whether it's in the town, whether it's in the parishes. This corporate strategy reflects that. I've already mentioned some schemes that we're working on. But just to add to that, Mr. Mayor, one of the things we're keen to do is to make sure that our play areas are renovated, improved, and again, that's across the borough, and that's why we've got that in the plan, but also to keep our streets clean. And keep those areas, and we all know, because they all come back up, where the same problems occur in the same areas, whether it's dirty streets, bins overflowing. It's important that we recognise that in local areas, the need varies, and that's why we're putting more money into the street scene services to make sure that we can target those grot spots and target those issues as and when they arise, because what's both important taxpayers often as not, it's just making sure that the basics are done, and it's important that we target them wherever they are in the borough, and that's why, again, it's in this strategy. The Astley Hall improvements I mentioned, Mr. Mayor, in March, hopefully in March next year, we will see Astley Hall reopen, and that'll be very exciting to actually reopen the hall, and then actually see that visitor experience that we've so often spoken about be delivered, and hopefully that will have a huge impact on our push to bring more people into this borough. Our events programmes will continue, and again, that will attract people into Chorley. So whether you want to be living here, we want to provide housing. Whether you want to be spending time here, we want to provide events and reasons to visit. Whether you want to work here, we're looking to support those people who work here. And above all that, Mr. Mayor, we're looking to make sure that Chorley contributes to a cleaner, greener, better environment for us all to enjoy. And therefore, I'm delighted to propose this strategy and hope that members will support it, and we can carry on with the great work that we do as a council. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Wilson. Councillor Bradley, you're here to second it. Do you want to reserve the right to speak, or are you going to speak now? Absolutely your choice.
I'll turn my microphone on so you can all hear me, whether you want to or not. Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Peter, for that introduction to the strategy. I commend you, as usual, and your team and the officers who've supported you in putting that report together. It makes excellent reading. Again, we are very aware that we've had a very difficult 12 months since we last discussed strategies, but we're building on past performance. This report builds on that past performance. This strategy adapts to the change of a post-COVID, post-pandemic world and the new situation that we're in. It's a strategy for all, as Pete said, all of the borough. It's a strategy for all of our people, because what we're after, and the headlines, it's a big document, but it's about having a safer, cleaner borough. It's about having happier, healthier and wealthier residents. That has been the focus of this administration for the nearly 10 years we've been in control, and it carries on through this strategy. And I commend Peter for bringing that forward. And the other thing, Mr Mayor, we're trying to do is take our staff and residents with us through this strategy. There is a lot of change going on out there in the world. There's a lot of change happening within this council. But we have to have one eye on what our staff and what our residents are thinking about it. And that's why I welcome the initial results of the resident survey. It's why I also welcome some of the feedback we've had about some of the recent changes from staff as well. Many people in their working lives have to change. That's enforced on us because of the situation we've been in, but we can only make that journey a bit easier for everybody involved. And all the way through this, Mr Mayor, as you keep badgering on about, Councillor Clifford keeps reminding us about, is this green thread that runs through everything, this green thread, because we are taking this seriously. I noticed some political point scoring in the newspaper this morning from the Greens. We're the red greens, whatever colour that gives you, I'm not quite sure. A murky purple, I'm not sure what colour that is. But as you know, Mr Mayor, we put our money where our mouths are. We put the money in to doing things and achieving things, and we're already seeing some outcomes from that. And the fact that we were sat, myself and the MP, were sat in a school the other week where we could point to in Chorley, a green school that's had massive investment, not by us, by the diocese. We support that investment massively. We want to see it rolled out elsewhere in Chorley. We're looking to seed fund if we can, because one school is fine as a beacon, but what we need is every school to have those kind of systems, because it's public buildings and public estate like that that really can see the benefits as opposed to individual households. Although I'll come to in a minute, I was sat today with the MD of Backseas, and the change that's coming on private heating systems, private boiler systems, private ways of heating your houses is going to be phenomenal as well, and gives massive opportunity as part of things like this strategy of a change. So what I think we see, Mr Mayor, through this strategy is also a very key line, is working with others, collaboration. We have seen over the last 12 months an acceleration, even with COVID, of the joint working with South Ribble. And it's vital we work with others. So today I attended, on behalf of the council, the Economic Summit, very presumptuous name, something that's happening in Chorley, at the Strawberry Fields Digital Hub, which was effectively the launch of the Chorley and South Ribble, the new Refresh Partnership. And it was a business event to cover three key themes. One was about access to finance for businesses and about the debt that an awful lot of businesses have built up over the last 12 or 18 months. Debt to the government, some of it, but also debt to landlords, debt to this council, debt to the taxman, all kinds of debt. The second thing was about skills and the serious lack of skills that are hampering our businesses growing and expanding. And the other one was about skills. Third one was about, Gary, help me? Land. Thank you, Gary. You beam more land at me because my head had gone for a moment. Land. It's about having the space to work. And the number of comments from businesses who hadn't been into the digital hub about what that space is like and how they need space like that was an eye-opener to me. Because what they said is the private sector isn't developing sites like that. The private sector is not building office type like that. And that's why this council did it. Vindication. People were waxing lyrical about it, which I was very happy about, but I was quite surprised as well. What that shows is, but what they also did, those businesses represented there, and there were some big businesses, BAE directors, Baxi Potterton directors, who were a 1 billion company, some very big, large organisations who operate already in our boroughs, Chorley and South Ribble. What they all said is you need to do more of it. You need to collaborate more. You need to tell us what you're up to. You have to understand what our problems are, and you have to work close together. I think that's a very important lesson, because as part of this strategy, what we're trying to do is also align to the wider strategy, not just for us and South Ribble, but for the wider Lancashire. We are entering discussions at the moment, or we have agreed to come back with a paper to this council probably in January about a county deal for Lancashire. Another way of joint working. We've been here before, I think, at least 5 times since I've been here. But I actually believe this time, because the rules aren't quite as tight as they have been before, there's an opportunity this one may work. because we're defining the arrangements. There is not unanimity about everything, and you won't be surprised by that. With 15 people in a relationship, there's very rarely unanimity. What we need to be doing in Chorley is setting ourselves up to work with others. We need to be setting ourselves up to be very clear about what Chorley wants to do. And I think the strategy does that. It's very clear about what Chorley sees as important. It's very clear that we also want to work with others. And again, that's quite deliberate within this strategy. So we've been affected by a worldwide pandemic. We have a good track record of delivery. We want to do more, and we want to do more with others. We have set targets within this strategy that we believe are challenging, we believe are attainable, but challenging, and therefore we also have to target working for those with others, but also have an eye to what's important for our residents. This is a bounce back strategy, a post-COVID strategy, but it's a roadmap to our future. Mr. Mayor, after today's events that I've attended with our business leaders, I'm quite excited about the opportunities that we have within this borough and in the wider Lancashire at the moment. I don't think there's any doom and gloom here in Chorley, and we need a strategy that's going to help us get to those sunny uplands, to quote Boris again. I keep quoting Boris, something's gone wrong with me. Those sunny uplands, because they are within reach, and we can do a lot of this here in Chorley, and this strategy sets that out. So happy to second it, Mr. Mayor. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Bradley. As I open it up for debate, I will invite Councillor Platt, who I denied earlier, the opportunity to put a question to Councillor Wilson about. Was it answered? You see, you turn your back on him for a minute. Right, slips it in. Yeah, okay. Right, anyone else wish to answer questions? Right, Councillor Clifford.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to thank the leader, Alistair, and the deputy leader, Peter. This is an excellent corporate strategy, all the team that's worked on it. I'm going to keep this very short. You're going to expect me to say it. It will be about climate mitigation, and 2030 is what I'm going to say. That is what we are doing in Chorley, carbon neutrality by 2030. And to paraphrase a famous quote from Tom Cruise, I'll just say, Chorley Labour Council, there is no substitute. Thank you.
There's nothing quite like it. There's nothing quite like a distraction, is there? So we'll be distracted in the direction of Councillor Riggott now.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't quite know how to follow that, to be honest. I had two questions, so should I do them one at a time, see how I'm different areas of the report. The first is page 22, paragraph 46. It has the table of the 4 new indicators that have been added and the reasons why, and that's really helpful. But have any indicators been dropped from the previous strategy?
Sorry, Councillor, just in the interest of making sure I answer this question accurately, I'm just rereading. Just bear with me 1 second.
Wilson, but it would be really useful, and I know it's all a part of the debate and the fun and games and the theatre of trying to catch people off guard, but if there's a question that you're mindful to be asking and you know it in advance, if you're able to provide that question in advance, it means that it's a bit easier to answer it more comprehensively. But obviously, Councillor Wilson, with his enormous talent, has managed to come up with an answer anyway.
Yeah, sorry, got there. Just thank you for your patience. Very kind. And not an unreasonable suggestion either. I'm bound to say that. Advance notice of the questions always useful. No, there's 4, as you say, there's 4 that's been amended. I think one's been rescoped and there's 4 new ones. As far as I'm aware, Mr. Mayor, that's where we stand.
You want to follow up on that, or is this your second question?
I think my question was how many have we dropped any?
No.
It's hard to believe don't we used to measure like town centre visitors, etc. I wasn't here before, but I seem to remember reading stuff like that.
We've changed a few over a couple of years, Mr. Mayor. Now town centre visitors, no, because obviously with the whole COVID thing as well, that was dropped or changed. I think that was at least one. If it was the last one, it might be the one before that. To be honest, Councillor Riggott, so there was one. But you do right. You used to measure, have the measure, and I think there were a couple of reasons why that dropped. Like I say, I mean, obviously the COVID was one. Obviously, there's town centre redevelopment. If my memory serves me right, I think it was more the town centre redevelopment actually, which is why we dropped, because obviously there was a huge change. But we do measure the number of visitors to the borough, obviously, but not to the town centre. And of course, there still is the measure, or used to be the measure on Market Walk, but that was only specific to Market Walk. So again, that can be that we could always dig old numbers up if that's what was needed. So on that basis, there's no changes.
Question 2.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Page 28, and those members who've attended ONS have probably heard me ask a couple of questions along some of these themes, where I try and get a feel for how we select our targets. And listening to Councillor Bradley a few minutes ago talking about how challenging some of ours are, he knows I've asked him questions about how we set some of these. An example, if I'm looking at the percentage of NVQ, centre population of NVQ level 3, which I think is the second line down. Currently, we're setting a target of 57%. I'm not sure how we're being challenging when we're currently actually performing at 58. So again, some context to how these are set and whether they are challenging or not. Sometimes you can just get in the habit of measuring everything rather than what's actually important.
No, I think absolutely. On the last principle, Councillor, I agree with you entirely. Sometimes you can set targets, and of course you've got to make sure that it's always a challenge. At the same time, there's always that balance between something that's challenging and something that's achievable as well, because there's no point setting a target that you're not going to get anywhere near on. Now, I know that on some of these, and Councillor Bradley may correct me if I'm wrong, but on some of these, such as things like the NVQ, that is also guided not just by, we don't just sit there in isolation and say what's a nice figure. That's guided by national standards, as well as what other authorities are looking at as well. So we do sort of try and get a feel for a general what's the national targets, what's the government expecting us to do, and so on and so forth. That's my understanding of that. That target, as it says, will be informed by that basis. I say Councillor Bradley may have more information on that one. If you wish, as always, if you want to know more detail about the methodology, or you want to know more detail, then I'm sure, again, you can speak to our officers who will be happy to supply you with that background. There's no problem there.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Boardman.
Next year that when we issue our corporate strategy, I do that at 6:25 and not at 3:30 in the afternoon. Councillor Wilson and Councillor Bradley spoke absolutely fantastically then about their corporate strategy, and there was lots in it from both of you, and you did a fantastic overview actually. But on scrutinising the strategy, I couldn't see quite a lot of what you were talking about in there within your corporate strategy. So we'll get to that later when I've got to discuss ours. But I know yours is an overarching, and there's a lot in it. However, there just seems to be a lot of what you've said that isn't outlined in the project, so we'll get to that a bit later. I'll have another look later, Alistair, and then email you back, if that's okay, Mr. Bradley. Quick question, and it's regarding page 12, paragraph 10, if that's okay. And it's, how do the administration believe they will increase delivery of affordable housing in the borough against the backdrop of recent underperformance, the lack of larger developments, and the unwillingness for housing associations to register, and social landlords to register new dwellings by developers? Knowing that, and I'll just add to that, knowing that we've got 2 or 3 years left of our current plan, and the new plan isn't to come through yet. So it's just, what is your ambition on that one? Thank you.
Just to pick up on your first point, Councillor Boardman, nothing changed in this document since it was published last week. You've had a week to look at it. I only had 2 hours to look at yours. When I read it, I realised I only needed 2 minutes, but we'll come to that later. There's nothing changed. Everything that I said is in there. I think sometimes people might get used to what we do, Mr. Mayor, and just take it for granted. It's all there. There's a hell of a lot in there. There's a hell of a lot that we're doing. And that's why we believe we're a good council and continuing to improve. Coming back to the affordable, I agree with you entirely that we are in need of delivering more. That is an absolute fact. It's a matter of fact that we're at the end of our plan period. I think the developers would take a different view from you, that we're at the end of the plan period, therefore we can't deliver, because they keep challenges on all these applications for safeguarded land and wanting to build and build and build. So, best efforts of the leader and myself and the Member of Parliament to persuade government of the need to protect these safeguarded sites and the green belt as a consequence. I hope they work, and I actually hope that you're right. I hope we have even bigger problem delivering affordable homes for the next couple of years, because that means we've put a pause on this unwanted and unnecessary development affecting everyone in Chorley and many members in their own wards, particularly in rural areas. What are we going to do about it? What are we going to do about it? I'm coming to it, Councillor. Just be patient. You have to put context to some of your political slants. What we're doing affordable housing, as I said in my open speech, we're going to bring forward plans to develop an increased number of affordable homes in this borough. And probably what it will mean, and I don't want to preempt any decision or what's going to be recommended, but probably what it means is us taking direct action ourselves to provide those homes in one form or another. Now, I think we've got to work out the details of that. We've got to look at the best mode of delivery. But you're absolutely right. If we wait for the market, we don't achieve, because as Councillor Bradley said in question, I think from Councillor Cullen's last week in Cabinet, if we leave it to the developers, they wriggle out of their commitment. They come to the planning enquiries, they come to the planning meetings, and they sit there with all honesty and tell you they're going to build 30% affordable homes. They get the planning permission, and then within weeks, certainly months, Mr. Mayor, we start getting feasibility arguments. We start getting, they can't deliver it, they can't bring it forward. And then we go down to 25%, and then we go down to 20%. And sometimes you get as little as 10 or 15. It's a disgrace. The way the national market works is not in the interest of providing affordable homes. It's in the interest of making significant profit for the developers. And we need to kick back against that. I hope the Conservatives will support us in that, and I hope we'll support our plans to try and address the issues locally when we bring forward our proposals.
Councillor Boardman.
Thank you. Yeah, just come back on that. The context, political as always, Councillor Wilson. We didn't expect anything else, to be honest. So the answer to the question is that we as a council are going to take responsibility for delivering these affordable units, because I, like you, know that the developers will not do that, and they certainly won't do that going forward. The likes of our own housing association, Jigsaw, they've got an appetite to deliver their own stuff, in fairness. So I just want to know, is that our focus? Because you guys will still be in control in a couple of years, and we have a couple of years of plan to let to go. We're down on our performance figures. We know that, Councillor Wilson. We're about this quarter, we're on 39 to a deliverable of 50. And as I said in the previous meeting last week, if that's year on year, that's about 44 low. So we're at 88 lower than we should be. So the action's needed now, Councillor Wilson, and it's not needed in 2 years' time. Thank you.
Yeah, Councillor Bradley.
Yeah, and Councillor Wilson's correct. We did discuss a lot of this around the Cabinet meeting last week. I think itself, Councillor Boardman asked some questions. Councillor Gabbott drafted papers, which our group have discussed, about potentially moving to mass social housing supply. That comes with a massive cost to this council. And members opposite constantly argue that we shouldn't be borrowing money. So will they be happy borrowing tens and tens of millions of pounds to fund that affordable housing? And on the current numbers that we're looking at with marginal returns, we can make more money some of the investments we're already doing, which the members opposite don't like, and less money from doing that social housing. Now, that does have a benefit, and it has a social benefit, obviously, and we're aware of that. And, we like to do things that have dual benefits. But I think it would, because of the way, again, that the national government structure things, it makes us uncompetitive compared to RPs. As you're well aware, RPs have different funding restrictions, different funding mechanisms, and different regulations that attach themselves to it. So we would love to deliver the housing numbers that are in this target numbers by the contributions the developers should properly do. What we will do is step in if we have to. But what that then means is some big questions to this council about what it's doing with its money. And what we may also have to do is, going back to some of my points you said which weren't in that, thing about working with others in collaborating with others to do just that.
Okay, are you happy with that, our response? Okay, is there anyone else wish to speak on this item? Right, there is an alternative strategy in the wings, and I think it is appropriate we listen to that now, and then we will take a vote at the end of it with both options on the table. No? All right, yours is just for noting, I believe. But feel free to speak to it now. Yeah.
If I may, that's all right, Mr. Mayor.
I'll let you this time.
Thank you very much. You're very generous as always.
I know.
Firstly, I'd like to second Councillor Wilson. Yes, he is absolutely right. It's been a really difficult couple of years for this council, and they've coped incredibly well. Our group would like to also pass the thanks on to the staff, to the officer and the directors who've coped impeccably well in the last couple of years and who really served our residents and our businesses. One of the biggest things it did was administer this government fund, which wasn't easy. I can tell you that wasn't easy at all, but they got it out, and they got it out incredibly quick. So we'd like to thank you all for that, and it's been a very difficult couple of years, and we hope it gets easier for you, in all honesty. Secondly, I'd just like to present our alternate corporate strategy, our plan. But before I do that, Mr. Mayor, I just want to make a few comments on the corporate strategy for the administration, if that's okay, as context, which I'm hopefully allowed to do. This evening before us, we have a refreshed corporate strategy in the administration. We are, however, a little bit concerned within the group that it's not a refreshed corporate strategy, it's a slightly watered down corporate strategy. The reason we say that is for years we've seen this corporate strategy from the administration peppered with large commercial projects, development projects in and around the town centre, which they have delivered and which they continue to deliver. Many of which have needed the support of central government funding, which we're not ignoring, and many of which have left us with a bit of a debt. What we have before us, though, is part of the previous year's strategy. However, with these large projects that are yet to be delivered, taken away, because many of them are going to be delivered in the next 12 months. What I cannot see is what's replacing them, what's coming in. Mr. Mayor, since the pandemic of 2019-20 and the past few years of direct government support, the world, our country and this borough has changed and is a very different place. The responsibility for well-being, mental and physical health of our residents will come very, very much down to us, this council, the community, our families and our friends. And the primary focus before us there is for this small district borough council who knows its place and must support the residents, provide the services and the homes that they live in and the environment that they're all going to enjoy. Although the administration strategy goes some way to say, and you both have done, that is addressing some of the above concerns, again, we've looked through the strategy and we can't see how some of those tailor. Mr. Mayor, how does the relaunch of Alistair tree planting and the improvement of digital skills directly improve the lives of many of our residents that are lonely, vulnerable, mentally sick, poor and unemployed? Mr. Mayor, how can we believe the administration when it tells us that it will deliver even better customer experience? Better than what? Better than what we've got now? Better than the 21.9% drop phone calls of our customers that ring up? Or better than a planning service, for instance, that is taking between 8 and 15 weeks to deliver on a planning decision. That's after 4 to 5 weeks of registering that. That's one of our core services. Mr. Mayor, we need a different approach to the same old corporate strategy. We need a strategy that puts the residents of this borough first. Mr. Mayor, tonight we have the pleasure in presenting our plan, an alternate corporate strategy for Chorley. One that we have rewritten and recreated, taken on board all the challenges the pandemic years have thrown at us. This plan puts the people of the borough at the heart of everything we do. A plan that gives our residents a different approach to the way a borough council should serve its people. Our plan is supported by, as you've seen, 5 key priorities. Delivering the best services, growing community well-being and the vulnerable, growing our economy, protecting the environment, and providing sustainable homes for all. Now, you might say they're all very similar to yours, and they probably are. What we've added into these is a number of themes, not projects. We don't have direct access to the offices at the moment. We don't know what the future holds for us. So what we have done is put some overarching themes under each one of these priorities. And with our hard work with the officers, we will plug the gaps and put the projects in and tailor with those themes. The values that underpin this are excellence, innovation, value for money, accountable, and respect. I'm not going to stand here, and I'm not naive to the fact that our alternative strategy will more than likely not be voted through. However, we believe the residents of Chorley need an alternative to the same but rehashed strategy they have endured for the past few years. And I will ask Debra to second it. Thank you.
Councillor Platt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have pleasure in seconding this strategy, but also I just wanted to reiterate thanks to the council staff and the directors for their efforts over the last 12 months, 18 months, and the efficient administering of the additional grants forwarded to Chorley from government. So on that note, I'd like to second this proposal, this strategy. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much. Is there anyone else wish to speak to this? It is for noting. Yes, Councillor Collins.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and just very much wish to concur with what Councillor Boardman's had to say. I think one of the things that's vital, and I was waiting to hear in the corporate strategy, really what was about the customer, about the residents of Chorley. What I got was almost the makeup of we're going to be a commercial letting agency, and then for the rest, well. To give you some examples of literally what has happened over the last week, and as very much Councillor Boardman said, 21.9 of dropped calls, 21.9% of dropped calls. I became a statistic this afternoon. I wanted to speak to an officer, so I managed to get through the initial, press 1, etc., and then was told, quite excitedly, I was number 1 in the queue. 6.5 minutes later, I was still number 1 in the queue. Other things that have happened in the last week, for instance, I'm still aware that the parish church in Horton, they're awaiting a response to a document they put forward about 2 weeks ago, which is a risk assessment for their remembrance service. They are still awaiting an answer whether they can have their remembrance service parade. Within Clayton Green, the sports centre there, DWP, actually run a squash league. On the 31st of August, they requested when would the league be able to start. As of Monday this week, they're still awaiting a response. Planning. I've had 3 people complain about planning and that length of time this week. I think one of the things that we're looking in our strategy is to concentrate on the customer. I would certainly ask that you do that as well. It's not just about the big projects. It's about ensuring the resident. I'm very much looking forward to seeing the survey results when they come, because that result, what you mentioned, is not my experience. So, again, I would very much support our strategy going forward.
Thank you, Councillor Collins. We've got Councillor Murray and then Councillor Riggott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to provide some reassurance that we are serious about supporting our communities. In our strategy, it does say we're going to deliver a programme of community resilience building, and every area and every neighbourhood area has a COVID recovery plan, which all members have seen because it was at the back of the neighbourhood area meetings. So we are serious about, taking our communities forward and supporting them in the challenges that they face. With regard to your issue at Clayton Green, if you send me the details, I'll make sure it's sorted.
Thank you, Councillor Riggott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to briefly touch on Priority 5, growing our economy. Looking during page numbers. I know it's tradition that you never accept anything the opposition put forward, then you'll go away and look at all the ideas that you wish you brought about. And thinking back to, or not, but we will see. The proof, I'm optimistic. Oh, come on. You told me that. listening back to Councillor Bradley's comments earlier about the meeting he attended today and partnership working and access to finance, maybe it would reflect that there's possibly opportunities where we could have grown the representation at those type of meetings to enable better outcomes for Chorley and Chorley businesses. And a couple of things I would maybe ask him to pay attention to in this section is when I attended the LEPS annual conference wearing a different hat a few weeks ago, I was really surprised by the presentation on the rural and farming economy and the real opportunities for skill gaps they are, the real opportunities about diversification. That is something we could really be looking at, especially the side of Chorley that looks towards West Lancashire. There's great opportunities that way. And also, I've been to a number of meetings where people have been talking about peer-to-peer networks that the county council have run and how they've been really, really successful on lots of different levels. And I encourage Chorley to consider its own version of how it could do those things with Chorley business to Chorley business. Thank you.
Before I bring Councillor Wilson back in, it is just worth pointing out that this proposal is for noting, and because it's for noting, it means it won't be voted down. Therefore, the door is open for us, for the council to pinch all your good ideas. So, on that basis, Councillor Wilson. So, do you want to wait until the end? Yeah. Who have we got? Councillor Morwood.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just thought I'd take the opportunity, as planning was mentioned. I hope that if there are concerns about particular applicants who have been waiting a number of weeks, I'm sure that you'll advise them to get in contact with the service leader and she'll be happy to look into it, because I'm sure there are very genuine reasons for that. But yes, we do have quite a number of, I think you'll be referring to the extensions of time, and it's all agreed with the developers, the applicants, and so forth. And as such, 100% of those applications go through in the time that has been agreed. And those of us who are on planning, including Councillor Boardman, know that those extensions of time, there are lots of reasons why we do that. In fact, it's positively encouraged by the government that we do things like that to ensure that we don't end up just refusing applications because perhaps they were very poor applications. And we advise the applicant to turn around and say, look, if you submit it in this form, it may not make it. But if you just take it back, have a look at it and make these adjustments, etc., you'll find it will go through without much of a problem. They may be very complex, as you know, very complex, large developments, which do take time. There are some very poor applications that come in, and the planning department has had lots in this last 18 months, 2 years, of particularly minor and other applications, lots and lots of them. There seems to be every other person seems to want to have an extension to their building. Since we've had lockdown, they've realised that they'd like to improve where they live because they've been stuck in it for quite a while. So we do this with the agreement of the developers, and they don't have to agree to that. They don't have to agree to an extension of time, but the vast majority of them do. And in fact, probably in the last year, only perhaps 3 have taken us to appeal. That's 2 from Redrow and 1 from another developer. And they're the only 3 in about the last year. So we have had problems. There has been a lot of applications that have been dealt with, but we have done it with, I think, very professionally. The department has done it, and despite their staffing problems, which are being resolved now, they have worked extremely hard, and they've been working on a number of public inquiries and so forth. So I have no problem in backing my service. Thank you.
Councillor Clifford.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Now, priority 3, protecting the environment. Now, I was very fortunate to be invited by the Mayor to sit in the climate debate with the school children of Chorley. It was a fantastic opportunity to listen to the children. Now, one of the questions that was raised was, are leaders doing enough? And they talked about greenwashing. Now, I've just read your priority 3. You could have put anything in that. But the glaring thing that's missing to me, because I'm very passionate, is to actually see carbon neutrality by 2030. Now, I know the Tories like to boot it into the long grass and we'll have it around 2050. You don't even make any mention of it here. Is this because you're just not really bothered? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. That's an interesting question. I think we'll have to have a response to that, Councillor Boardman, before we bring Councillor Wilson in to round this thing up. You may indeed.
Thank you. Why would we put something in our strategy, which is yours? Your proposal, which we said at the time, is going to be incredibly difficult to deliver by 2030. And your group and yourself clearly said it might be difficult to deliver, but we need a target. And if we aim at that target, we may just deliver it. So I hope I'm still on the council by 2030, and I hope I can shake your hand when you've delivered total carbon neutrality for this borough by 2030. But I also wish you very good luck.
That's very magnanimous of you. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would say of the opposition's colourful leaflet, it's not a strategy. There's probably nothing in it. There's probably nothing in there that you wouldn't necessarily disagree with, because it is a statement of aims. And as a statement of aims, as you say, it reflects a lot of what we've already said and done. The difference is we have to come up with a strategy which has projects in it, and it has to have measures to show you performance. We do that work. The opposition have failed to do so. And therefore, I listen, and with part amusement, to some of the criticism, because we get criticised for running up debt, but we get no mention made of the revenue that those projects bring in. We then get criticised for doing those projects because we're supporting it, it's all obsessed on the town centre. When they're not, and it's more focused on the other areas, we get told that it's sort of a watered-down version. I'm not sure what the opposition want. I certainly can't tell by reading their strategy. There's no detail behind it. But I think, just picking up on a couple of things, Councillor Boardman, you probably made one, what I thought was critical comment about how does the measures in our strategy help people who need that support. And Councillor Collins has backed that up, saying it's sort of a commercial lettings agenda and not dealing with what's there for the people. I just ask, well, I'm not going to ask a question, I'm going to make a statement. How does opening a GP surgery in the East Ward of Chorley not help people? How does opening an extra care facility to deal with those specialist needs for people's housing not help people? How does opening a pharmacy in a new community centre, new play areas, not help people? It does. It deals with a need, and that's what this council under this Labour administration has always done. Look what the need is, look where we're failing, look where people need help, and plug those gaps, direct that support. And yes, that sometimes also means borrowing money to make that happen, just like we did with the youth zone, just like we did in the town centre, just like we're doing now with Tatton. That helps people. Digital skills, you make direct reference to, Councillor Boardman. What does that do for someone who's lonely or in need of support? It gives them access to the outside world and gives them access to services, whether it's council services or other organisations. Without that, they are isolated, they are on their own. So this strategy deals head-on with the local need, head-on with dealing with people who are in isolation, head-on with people who are elderly and need more support, head-on with young people who haven't got access to those services. That's what this strategy does. Yes, there's a commercial element to it. Why do we need a commercial element? Because unfortunately, the days of the government who recognises the value of local governments and gives them money have long since gone. We've had to stand on our own 2 feet. So we do 2 things. We bring the revenue in, but we also provide vital frontline services. So let's not make any apologies or sort of look at things and say it's not quite as good as it should be because we've had a statement of aims from the opposition, statements of things we would like. Also, that doesn't deliver anything. It doesn't even promise the people of Chorley anything. This strategy delivers on what people need. There are always areas you can improve. Contact rates, customer satisfaction, number of missed calls. Of course, we're all concerned about those things. That's what we address. These things come up from time to time, and because we're flexible and because we keep on top of things, try to address them. But the difference is this strategy delivers on the needs of the people, in addition to keeping this council afloat, in addition to making sure that we have a strong future so we can invest again in services. What the opposition failed to do and continue to fail to do is provide anything tangible, any real promise of real change and improvement for the residents of Chorley.
Right, Councillor Bradley.
Wilson didn't sort of pick up on then. The larger projects issue, to be fair, we've listened to your concerns around extending the council's borrowing. That comes back to what I said earlier. We will borrow more if it's for the right things. We may borrow more, invest in housing, if that's what we as a council think is the right thing to do. But I know we're about to discuss the capital strategy, and I look at our borrowing, and I look at the value of the assets, far in excess of the borrowing, and providing an income, as Councillor Wilson just referred to. A couple of other points. Dropout rates, Councillor Cullen's raised, which has been a hot topic of debate to the shared services. Chorley's is far higher than South Ribble's. It depends what you measure and how you measure it. Most of South Ribble's calls go direct to the departments, not to the customer services. So number one, it doesn't record when people drop off the phone. And number two, there's nobody there to answer it, it just rings forever. Ours rings and tells you while you're waiting, you may be able to do this quicker while you're doing something else. I personally think the rates are too high. But when you dig down, there is a story behind it, and we get to the bottom of that story, and I think that's what shared services come up to do. The performance of the council, Councillor Cullen produces some anecdotes. We've shared his anecdotes and our own anecdotes about what's going on with the Chief Executive, with the directors. They will tell you, they've all been sat in rooms, myself and Councillor Wilson and others, to say exactly what we're not happy about. The resident survey comes back, happier people. Are we happy? No, because we think we can do better, and we will strive to do better. And I don't think there's any director of this council who is in any doubt of that. And one of the things that we need is better responsiveness to residents and to councillors when they raise issues on behalf of councillors. The rural skills point that Councillor Riggott made is a very good point. Again, it was raised at this summit we were at. I think the only area of the economy that's affected by Brexit more than by COVID is rural skills. That's the biggest impact on them, and therefore the opportunity to access some of that funding I think will be really good. And I think we need to look at that. So that's one of your ideas we'll steal for definite. The collaborative working, that's what we're at today. That's what we're doing as part of the Chorley Partnership. And you ask about people attending. Personally, I'm the vice chair of that group. Councillor Foster chairs it from South Ribble. But I am sure, like me, he would not deny any councillor sitting on those meetings to hear what's said if they so wanted to. Any councillor, it's a council meeting, it's not a closed shop. Sit in, listen to what's going on, because, and members will be aware, going back to my collaborative working mantra from before, there was a risk. We had a shared services meeting tonight, and I'm very concerned, Councillor Riggott, I've raised it myself and others, about an apparent shift in conservative thought in South Ribble away from shared working. Some idea this is a Chorley takeover. Some idea is that it's a merger by stealth. It is not, and I will reassure this council and South Ribble Council, because I said to Councillor Walton, who's leading the Conservative group earlier on before, we have no intention of merging with South Ribble. We don't want to. We're quite happy as Chorley, thank you very much. And I'm sure they have no intention of merging with us. So as long as we all remember that, we will be fine with that. And the fact that officers work in two councils, well, they should be delivering for both councils. And perhaps both councils just have to be more clear with officers exactly what they want. So I think we just need to be very clear about what we're saying when we say these things. Apart from that, yes, there are some good ideas here. We'll try and incorporate them. We will note them, Mr. Mayor, not steal them. We will note them. Thank you very much.
Right, thank you very much indeed. We've got to the point now where the debate is completed, and therefore I am putting it to the vote that the recommendation at paragraph 2 is that the corporate strategy for 2021-22 stroke 23-24 be approved. All those in favour, please show. Anyone against? Any abstentions? Was that an abstention? No, it's just a bit slow. Right, okay. Right, okay, that's approved. Thank you very much indeed. Moving on to item 6, which is the capital strategy update 2021, pages 45 to 52. Councillor Wilson, your show.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Given the length of debate, the number of items left, I will try to be as succinct as possible. At the budget meeting this year, we obviously approved the council's capital strategy, but we also included in there that during the year we'd bring it back for review. So this is that part of that process, Mr. Mayor, as we're sort of 6 months or just over into the financial year. There's no changes to the indicators as such to the strategy, with the exception of in paragraph 11 there on page 46. There's reference made that we have had changes to the government's rules surrounding borrowing, so the council now has to can borrow, but not just purely for yield. So we can't just borrow for the principle of just making money. Obviously, there need to be other gains and other reasons that are foremost, and therefore that's an extra layer of bureaucracy that we have to go through. And the second, Mr. Mayor, is following advice from the auditors, as it says in the second bullet point, is to make sure that we have thorough evaluation of the business case with any future investments as well. So that's incorporated into the strategy. Councillor Bradley mentioned before, Mr. Mayor, the debates that we've had both in full council and cabinet about the council's position in relation to what it borrows and the reasons for that, and the debt that we have. Perhaps just to focus minds, Mr. Mayor, if we turn to page 50, we can see their table for borrowing in excess of investment income. And then as we go down, we can see a summary of net income from existing assets. So we get a feel for our borrowing, but then more importantly, we get the figure which tells us that with all our borrowing where we've invested into our assets, this council, having taken out those costs, borrowing costs, continues to make a profit, and is projected that that profit will increase. So those big ticket items that we refer to, first and foremost, either provide a key service or be instrumental in shaping the local economy, and on top of that, bring forward a significant income to this council. And it's just worth reminding members that when our revenue budget is in the region of £14 million, in the face of huge government cuts over the last 10 to 12 years, income figures of 1.3, 1.8, 2.3 million, a significant contribution. And the question always comes back, if we don't do that and if that money's not there, where do you get the money from? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Boardman. Right, have we any questions? Councillor Boardman.
Just one, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much. Agenda page 50, paragraph 29. It's on the summary of net income from existing assets. Councillor Wilson, previously to this, as you know, I love looking at figures. You know, I should just say that. Look at them all day and come here and look at them again. Right, previous, we have always reported Market Walk extension and Market Walk, which the council bought a number of years ago, and which we've waved the flag of in this council £1 million profit each year. This year is the first year I've seen them both wrapped up together, and in brackets we've got a number of 529,000, I think that is. I take it that's profit, 529,000. So, Councillor Wilson, just let me know why we've amalgamated these two, and how as a council we have a reporting mechanism of something that's an asset we've already bought and acquired and has a current business case, and an asset that we've actually built has obviously a debt against it, which we are paying off over a period of time, which isn't full at the moment, but will be, and will generate an income. I just want to know how we've suddenly merged that all together and why.
I think, Councillor Boardman, the answer was at the last budget, but I will double check, because I'm pretty sure that that's what we said, that's the way we said we would report that we merged the two, because you are right, obviously they're two separate entities. In what one was an existing facility, an existing market shopping centre rather that we bought. One is one we've built. But of course, it was called Market Walk Extension, so it was always this would be one one unit, as it were, for the offer of the town centre. And I think that's where the change was made. I'll double check. In terms of the number, of course, we know that with COVID and with the freezes on rents and so on, that's why we see the change. But as we reported there, that will bounce back, and we hope it will continue to do so. And the good news is we have new letting in Market Walk Extension to be open in the new year, and finals remaining space.
Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At the risk of repeating myself. On page 49, paragraph 24, it says there is a requirement to ensure that net debt, that is the sum of borrowing and other long-term liabilities net of investments in 21-2, does not, except in the short term, exceed 103.229 million. I was wondering if Councillor Wilson could tell us what the current level of net debt is.
It is that 8. I'm just trying to find the figure, Councillor. Oh, 89.27. Councillor Bradley's there ahead of me. Sorry.
You need to stand up if you want to reply.
So just to be clear, that's the opening capital finance requirement as it was in April, and that's still the level of net debt currently.
Yeah. Now, Councillor Bradley's very good here. He can answer this question for me. 83 million is just said. But what as always, Councillor Boardman, in order to be Councillor Chapman, sorry. For interest and precision, we'll get you the figure to make sure that I'm correct.
Okay, you happy with that? Okay. There's no further debate. We have a recommendation at paragraphs 2 and 3. Note the contents of the report, including the revised performance indicators for approval for council. Note that the council's current position regarding the portfolio of investment assets. Can we have an indication of those in favour of this report? Those in favour? Okay, we got that. Anyone against? Any abstentions? Councillor Boardman abstains. To solve. Right. We can move on to item 7. Polling station review, pages 217 to 222. This item is for decision and it will be introduced by Councillor Wilson.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor. Did you say it is me, isn't it?
It is you.
Yeah, good. So we're still arguing about capital. I'll just get back to the report if I may, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
I'll do it the old-fashioned way, which is use paper. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As members will be aware, we've had to undertake the polling station review. I know that a survey was sent out in October to consult with members to see if they had any recommendations for changes or improvements. What we see come forward now, Mr. Mayor, it's in a part, it is in the second paper, is not the that was sent out more recently. Some changes that, again, after further consultation, we see the recommendations, paragraphs 2, 3 and 4. First is to transfer the polling station A807 at Angles Arch from St Barnabas Church Hall to Riggott Parish Church Hall. Second is to permit notices at 3 properties at the end of Lodge Bank to use Brinscoe Hillside Methodist Hall. Recommendation 4 has been changed, which is now just to continue using St Lawrence's Primary School as a polling station and increase the amount of signage displayed at the polling station. 5 is relocate the existing polling station at St Chad's Primary School to St Chad's Parish Hall, and then transfer voters from St Mary's Centre to Trinity Methodist. Those recommendations, Mr. Mayor, the reason I read them out is because it is quite detailed. We need to make sure that's clear. They have been brought forward, as I say, after some detailed consultation. Never easy trying to get this right because, of course, the way polling districts lay out sometimes, and also the availability of venues in the right place, particularly push against using schools. So I think we have to thank Catherine for her diligent work on this and trying to get it right, both addressing members' needs and making sure that all these sensors and our polling stations work efficiently on the day. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Bradley.
Keeping councillors happy is never easy, as we all know. There is an amendment actually, or in the report attached on page 229, 1 for those members who can see it. The amendment around St Mary's Parish Church moving to Trinity hasn't carried through to the back page. So on page 221, in the bottom box on the halfway down the page, it should say transfer existing electors from St Mary's Parish Centre. It should say, instead of to St George's Church Old, to Trinity Methodist Church. That's just a change in the report, which I'm sure can be corrected in the minutes. And I thank North West Ward members for picking that out.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. It seems to be fairly non-controversial. It's a response to, yeah, I've got it. The requests, in a manner of speaking, sorry. Right, you've thrown me now. Right, no, it is pretty non-controversial, and I was just wondering if there was anyone wish to comment, and clearly there is. Councillor Platt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's a positive comment, and I'm applauding the officers for giving other venues a chance, really. In Exton, we have 4 new venues. We had 2 new community centres and a library and a pub, and they all worked really well, which meant that 2 of our schools didn't have to close for polling day. And I'm just saying thank you for that, and thank you for the officer for all her work that she's done since she took over. Thank you very much.
Councillor France.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd just like to say that I'm quite pleased with the movement from St Chad's School to St Chad's Village Hall. There's plenty of parking there. It's a much better venue, and I obviously appreciate what the head teacher said. I fully welcome this. It's a much better venue, I would have said, for a polling station. And as I say, there's a car park. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? If not, Councillor Riggott, sorry. It's the Councillor Riggott show.
Supposed to be neutral and impartial, Mr. Mayor.
Keep going.
I just want to be positive too, but you know.
Waiting for cheese and biscuits, hurry up.
Lancaster Way Community Centre, I just wanted to thank this council and the officers for listening and trying that centre. As the feedback says in the survey, it was very popular, it worked very well. When I went and saw Church on it, as we all do, it was much better than the old. I also wanted to just thank you for that. And just wondered if because it does, the comments about additional signage being required are drawn to. I just wondered if that will be discussed with local members close to the time as to what's appropriate for that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Riggott, for your contribution. Is there anyone else? Deputy.
I'd just like the members to give some consideration to an alteration or an enhancement of the polling card. When we have changes of polling stations, it would make things a lot more accessible for residents and for the wonderful people who come to live in our borough. If the map's there to show them where their polling station is, just wanting to be mindful about increasing turnout. Thank you.
Councillor Wilson, do you want to respond?
Yep. I've already raised that, Councillor Berry. We will do more to try and do that. Sometimes with the map, the problem with the map, of course, you end up with something that's tiny on the little polling card, and it's about as much use as, just like a blurred piece of paper. But what we are going to be doing is writing to residents this year, so maybe something we can do in that. We can also basically put on a code, a website address that you can go onto as well to sort of get a detailed map. So there's ways we can look to try and improve it. Whether that would actually end up being a map on the back of the polling card, I'm not sure, but we'll definitely look at it.
Okay. Right, with that, we'll come to the conclusion of the debate, and with the amendment as already mentioned, and we have an indication if we agree the proposals. Anyone against? Are you against, Councillor Boardman? Or are you just a bit late putting down? You're all right. Right, okay. Any abstentions? None. Okay, thank you. That's agreed. Moving on. Item 8, introduction of new statement of licensing policy under the Licensing Act 2003, pages 59 to 116. This item is for decision and will be introduced by Councillor Morwood.
you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, members. The report before you is the statutory review of the Council's Statement of Licensing Policy under the Licensing Act 2003 and to seek adoption of that policy. The recommendations in paragraphs 2 and 3 are there to approve the draft policy and to approve the actual policy. It will take effect from tomorrow. So there's nothing like bringing it at the last minute. But no apologies for that. It takes a long time to put this together, as you'll see if you've read it through. It's a statutory duty we have, and we have to bring this before the council every 5 years, and so this is what we have done. A background to the report is 7, 8, and on paragraphs 7, 8, and 9. You're all, I'm sure, pretty familiar with all the various licensing that goes on. There's a list there of the various licenses and so forth that come into this. I'll draw your attention to paragraph 10, which highlights 3 changes. Although it's been entirely rewritten, brought up to dates and so forth, there are 3 particular new areas which bring to your attention. And that's, as I say, 10A, the core hours for licensable activities. Give, again, core hours at which various licensing operations take place. It's a guide because there is such a wide variation on these things. They're not arbitrary, and so obviously individual application will be looked at. The code of practice for drinks promotions, buy one get 3 free, is not a good idea. So that lays down the various rules and regulations for drinks promotions, and that they don't. Don't know that. But I think actually the 10C is a significant one. As you can see, a pool of model conditions. When these applications come through, they are vastly varied in their content and so forth. And so we have given some various guidelines to the various applications that hopefully will improve the situation and move things along more slowly. Paragraph 11, all the various statutory bodies, etc., that we have to consult are listed there, and that consultation took place between September and October. And it's a credit to the people who wrote this report, to the enforcement team, that basically those were the only responses there that were brought to their attention. So following the meeting of the Licensing and Public Safety Committee, they have agreed this draft, and I bring it before you for your approval. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Lynch.
Happy to second that, Chair. I'd also like to note that once approved, hopefully, that all members of the Licensing and Public Safety Committee will be provided with this, and also that members of the Licensing Act 2003 subcommittees will have a copy, provided this is something that currently doesn't happen. And I think it would be beneficial to all members to have a copy of the policy there whilst dealing with potential issues. Always.
It's just a quick one on point 12. It just says that we got 1 response to the consultation. Does it just mean that's the one response that you're talking about, or out of all the consultations we got 1 response?
And put the those are that is the only response, and those are the that's the consideration that's put into the policy. But that was all that came back.
Okay, there's no further debate. The item is for decision. Please indicate all those in favour. Anyone against? That's moved and carried. Right. Item 9, changes of council appointment, pages 117 to 120. Councillor Bradley.
I'm not sure how to do something, but on the grounds it's never stopped me before, I'll do it. It's to nominate myself as the Chorley representative on the new Chorley South Ribble partnership that I mentioned earlier on in the meeting, which replaces our former Chorley Public Service Reform Board and merges that with the existing South Ribble partnership on the idea that we can do more together. So that the proposal is that I take on that role. I will act as the vice chair for this year. As I said, Councillor Paul Foster is currently the chair of that in this first year of it operating. And I do know the service given by previous councillors who sat on the Public Service Reform Board. I personally, and I'm just all this now, is I think we need to do something that keeps that going, that work in Chorley. Well, it needs to be renamed as something and change its scope, but that's something I'll pick up with officers. And I reiterate the comment I made earlier to Councillor Riggott that I think any member, particularly cabinet members who wish to attend that partnership board, if they're interested in what the work of it is doing, by all means can attend, because I think it's important that it's not just working behind the scenes, it's in the full visibility and glare of the council, and that we're getting regular reports from it back to this council, so that people are well aware of what it's up to.
So in that way, it makes sure that there's no democratic deficit.
Exactly that, Mr. Mayor. I couldn't have put it better myself.
I know. I've always tried to be helpful. Okay. Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, happy to second and congratulate Councillor Bradley on appointing himself.
Right. Is there anyone wish to oppose Councillor Bradley's nomination of himself? Clearly not. Yes. Even dressed up as a Santa, you got booed, didn't you? Yeah. So, right. So, can we agree that? Those in favour, please show. Okay. Thank you very much. That's agreed. Oh dear me. Introduction of new statement of licensing policy. Oh no, we've done that. We've done that. We're going backwards through the agenda and I'm trying to get to the cheese and biscuits. Anyway. It's only for those invitees. You get wine as well and gin and tonic if you're good. Item 10 is procurement of plan making capacity for the Central Lancashire Local Plan, pages 121 to 182. Councillor Bradley.
Thank you again, Mr. Mayor. Busy night, yes, as Councillor Wilson says. Right, so the purpose of this report is to identify a requirement to get our local plan in place, as we previously discussed, ideally by the end of next year and early into 2023 for the final sign-off. To do that, we have a body of work to do, and the report documents that we are currently running behind the timetable and at risk of running further behind, and therefore we need more resources. To get those resources in-house is really difficult. We've talked about skill shortages and lack of vacancies in structure. Skilled strategic planning officers are hard to come by, and we have lost them, and we have failed to recruit them, and therefore the decision has been put forward by the Jack and the local plan working groups within each council to look to plug that gap with consultant resource. Two reasons. One, it will get the work done and buy a time, because you can drive consultants to do the work. With direct staff, you may run the risk that more may leave or have issues or whatever, which may prevent them doing that. And to guarantee delivery of that plan, we need to put that investment in. So the proposals are there's an additional budget of £300,000 put in. Our council share will be £100,000, i.e. a third of that. But in reality, members, you need to realise we would have been employing direct staff, probably 2 planning officers. It would have cost us probably £70,000 to £80,000 at least, plus their on cost. So in a way, that money's already in the budget. This has given us the extra budget to go external and to do the procurement to do that. So that's the second point. We should develop an agreement for professional services developed by Perfect Circle, who are the consultants identified by the joint working group, agreeing a schedule of tasks, programme, associated costs, etc. It then documents in paragraph 4 the type of contract, which is NEC professional services contract, option G. Councillor Boardman looking excited over there by that one. Special variant for those niche people who like NEC contracts. And then item 5 obviously also puts in an extra £200,000 of further requirements subject to approval by executive members of breakdown of spend if there's any future requirements on that. And that's been discussed previously with Preston and South Ribble. I'll be quite honest with you, none of the councils are happy about this. None of us like being in this situation, but we are where we are. And in reality, we are in a situation that an awful lot of councils across the country are in as well. So we have to get the plan in place. I think we're all seeing the effects of the plan running out, expiring, whatever the word is for a finishing plan. and therefore the sooner we get this done, the better. And I will quote the estimable words of Councillor Goldsworthy: this kind of thing always costs you more money in the long run. And he's not wrong. He's wrong about many things, but not that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Let's have a second to Councillor Morwood first.
Happy to second that, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Boardman.
No problem with this, having sat in the jack and know the situation and the urgency of it. There's a couple of comments that I've got under the risks category. One of the risks is that Chorley Council borne in the cost for the £300,000, and we've got a verbal agreement to get the money back off South Ribble and Preston. Would it be worth us getting something written before we actually sign that contract? We know how difficult it is to get money out of councils these days, especially our neighbouring councils. That's the first question. I'll come back on the second one, if that's all right.
Well,
happy to do that. And as of last Friday morning, probably quite hesitant about getting the money off Preston, but it was a very positive meeting with them on Friday afternoon. Jonathan obviously was nice that I wasn't, and I'm more confident that they will stop up this. This is a shared operation. Each council is investing different amounts of money by doing its different jobs, so there is a bit of money to move between all the different councils. It's very much a balancing act. So it's not actually we're just paying money out. They are also paying money out for consultants to balance things off. So happy to take that comment on board.
yes, if you wish.
Just a comment which you just need an answer on, really. We're in this position because we are 3 councils in central Lancashire going for one local plan, Mr. Mayor. Have we done any kind of background scoping on whether it would be more beneficial for us to produce our own smaller local plan, just as Chorley Council?
Right. Okay.
I'm going to, getting whispering from my learned friend who's been in more planning appeals than I have. It is one strategy and 3 local plans, so each local plan works together as an operation. Yes, we always have an eye to what it will cost to do it on our own. The whole point of doing this is it's cheaper for us to do it. Everything doesn't have to be done bespoke to Chorley, and it's more robust, so the long-term cost may be more. Preston, its frustration perhaps working with us in South Ribble at times, because we are seen to be racing ahead and they're concerned that we're going too fast. Anyway, there you go. They had said, we might consider going on our own. They didn't want to do it because of the cost involved, so I suspect that they did it far more detailed look at it than we did and thought, yes, this is not really for us either. I'm fairly certain, I'm looking around here, that it will be far more prohibitively expensive, but we can come back with that if you want us to give you a rough approximation of how much more.
Contact with that response. Right. This item is for decision, and if there is no further debate, we'll decide. Please show of hands those in favour. Anyone against? Any abstentions? No. Okay, thank you. Item 11, exclusion of press and public. This item is for decision. Councillor Bradley.
Mr. Mayor.
Sorry, I've done it again to you.
But I'm delighted to see a few members of the public here, particularly a couple of random ones at the back there. Yeah. It's a sign of a return to normal, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, keeping an eye on you.
Something like that, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Wilson.
I'm happy to second, and obviously Councillor Bradley's on silent news.
Okay, so if we can ask anyone present the public to... Oh yes, okay, those in favour of excluding present public? Anyone against? No? Okay.